Welcome to the Didi and Lital Show. Advice, thoughts, and stories from a married couple on cybersecurity, technology, and life in general. Now here are your hosts, Didi and Lital.
Hello and welcome to the Didi and Lital Show. I'm Lital. Hi Didi, how are you doing? It's another week.
I am awesome. Recovering from feeling sick for like 24 hours. Nothing makes you feel any better than not needing to throw up. That is the best. That is.
Well, happy 2023.
And the norovirus that's happening in Massachusetts.
But you gotta keep the expectations low.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Well, let's start the year with sickness.
Exactly.
Well, we have a great guest today. Hi, Amit.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm also very tired.
Very tired.
Yeah.
Jet lag too. Coming back from vacation.
Jet lagged and with a 1-year-old that is not really into sleeping anymore.
Oh.
So yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
But at
we've
least
been through this stage.
But at least Iron Maiden.
At least, yeah.
Yes. I caught them in concert here when they were in Xfinity Center.
They were just here in Worcester a month ago, 2 months ago.
Did you go?
No, I didn't.
That's
I
bad.
couldn't. I had to be home.
I had to be. You had
and
to be
I'm
home with the
I'm
one-year-old.
really regretting it. Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
life post kids, it's not the same. Well, really,
What is life
What's
even?
life? Very happy to have you here, Amit Serper. Why don't you introduce yourself instead of me doing it for you?
You're doing it so well though.
I'll chime in. You start.
What do I say?
What do you do for a living?
I am a security researcher, and I work at a small startup called Sternum. We do
Best part.
The bone here. We have an IoT security solution for exploit mitigation and general visibility. It's a fun place. There's like 40 of us, still small, and getting things done. So yeah, that's me. Unless there's other stuff you wanted me to mention.
No, Amit and I have been working together for a few good years at
Yeah.
Cyber Reason. This is how we met.
True.
Had a lot of fun. Amit is a great researcher. We'll talk about it and the experience we went through together. But maybe we start with explaining to people what is security research. I'm not sure everybody knows, is it something that every company needs to have? Is it something that, then how do you get to do it? I have so many questions around it. So maybe you start, and maybe by telling how you got to do it, we'll get to that.
Yeah. Okay. So, first of all, what is security research? Is I think it's the corporate correct term for hacking.
White hat hacking, right?
Okay. Yeah.
That's
you
how
can say that. Yeah. Okay. and it depends on the context of the company. I mean, not every company should have security researchers. I don't know. Does Starbucks need to have security researchers?
Maybe.
I don't know.
If they have an app, don't they need to know that the app is secure? Somebody needs to try to break it.
Yeah, but who is writing the app? Is it the baristas writing the app, or is it like an external company that they hire and they should do the security assessments?
Yep.
So I think that companies, like product companies or services companies that are in the security market and companies that are in that field, I think that they should have it, and majority of big companies do have it. Like, companies like Salesforce, they have like they had a fairly solid red team, and all of those companies they do have security researchers on staff, be it assessing their own internal security or assessing the security of third-party tools or platforms that they're using, because now everyone's using everyone else's stuff, because everything is in the cloud and everything is on someone else's computer. So in that regards, I think that companies should employ various what's the word I'm looking for?
Somebody to make sure that nothing blows up.
yeah, but like I mean, like
Actively looking for potential problems.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm also coming off of a nasty cold, like pretty much everyone else. So.
Yeah, that's
Everyone
the reality.
is.
Well, cool. How did you get to that? How do you learn to do those things?
So it started when I was a teenager. So I didn't really like going to school, and going to school required waking up in the morning, which is something that
You're not good at
not very good at, and back at the day I wasn't a fan of. So I just wanted to sleep all the time, and
Still not a fan of.
still not a fan of. And if I could stay home and do computer nerd stuff, I would rather do that than go to school and learn something that won't ever come useful in life. So I started messing around with computers like from a very young age. Like my parents got me my first computer when I was 5 or 6, and
What was it?
it was a 386, 33 megahertz with a turbo button that scales it down to 16. And
Yes, the turbo button.
25 megabyte hard drive, and I think 2 megabytes of RAM. I think.
You know, those of us that started with a Commodore envied that.
Yeah, there's a
He still has some hair.
Yeah, there's a small age gap.
Yeah.
But
The hair is regardless. The hair is attributed to.
Ageless.
oh,
being hairy to
I'm
you.
wearing a toupee. No, I can show. Look, you see that? Oop.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's with it's very convenient. You wake up in the morning and your hair is always perfect. It's pretty good. So I had my first computer when I was 5 or 6 years old, and I just used it for playing games. I was very young, and it was the days of DOS computers. So you had to, like, as a kid, I would like use DOS because I didn't have Windows back then. And sometime around that time, I also learned. So DOS came with QBasic, that you could like learn how to program using QBasic. So I started messing around with QBasic and writing like very, very basic programs. And as time went on, and the internet became a thing, because I can say that I'm still old enough that I started started messing around with computers before the internet. So when the internet came about, and back then I was still in Israel, I had my first modem, like a 14400 baud, yeah.
Yes.
And that was
For
that
the 28.
Yeah, and then I had a 800 baud.
And then
Yeah,
the
that was
56.
fun times.
We've been through that.
And around that time when the internet started coming about, you would hear stories about there was this guy who hacked the Pentagon, like this Israeli guy who hacked the Pentagon, and you would hear stories about hacking, but everything was so basic, like like this person, like this dude called, like he phoned a modem that belonged to a bank, and he sent some 80
War games.
Yeah, and sent some 80 commands and stole money or something.
Yeah.
So that was very obscure and like sexy and mysterious. And
you wanted to be.
And I wanted to know
Disguised?
how to do it. Yeah. And I think that my first experience with like seeing something like that was, there was a Trojan back at the time that was called NetBus, that you could like download and send people and like trick people into running that file, and then you would be able to do whatever you want in their machine. So I started looking for basically I read about how NetBus works, and I understood that once a person like double clicks the file that you send them, it opens a NetBus server on their machine on port 12345. So I said, why won't I just look for like open ports, like open 12345 ports? So I started scanning so I had to read about what an IP address is and how does it work and what is a subnet mask and how I can scan for IP addresses and all of that thing. So I started scanning the IP ranges of my internet provider for open ports on 12345, and I found a bunch of them, and then I started getting into those people's machines, and like you could do stuff, you could mess with them, you could open and close their CD-ROM trays, or you could pop messages on their screen, or you could just be like, you could just, can I swear here? Is that okay?
Yeah,
yes,
totally.
Yes, please,
Okay.
please.
So you could be an
Encouraged.
asshole and like, you know, erase all of their stuff. So that was like my first attempt or experience with security, but I didn't really know what I was doing. And later on, because you two are Israelis too, so do you remember Surfree? There
Yep.
was this
Yep.
Yeah.
free internet service provider that it was called Surfree, where you would only pay, again, that's back in the days of dial-up modems. You would only pay for basically the phone call. The internet access wouldn't cost you money, but Surfree would occupy like 33% of your screen with a friggin' ad bar.
Banner.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And I wanted to learn.
The day people thought they can make money out of banner ads.
Yeah, well, it was the 90s, and I wanted to find a way to like get rid of that banner, and there were several approaches to do that. And what I ended up doing was to look at the string section on the executable that runs the dialer, and you could just find like all of the credentials that the dialer is using to connect you to the internet. So then I just took those credentials and set up a dialer with those credentials, and I could use Surfree without ads. And that's how I got into those things. And then later on,
I did something much simpler.
what?
I just expanded the screen size. You could just erase that top part of the bar. Again, don't forget, I'm older. I used to do assembly at that time. It was really easy to just hack your own.
Well, another trick
screendriver.
Another trick that I saw was someone, like, you would inject a DLL into the dialer. Once the connection is up, you would just your DLL would kill the main
banner.
window. Yeah. But you see, that's the great thing about hacking. There's like
Multiple ways
and
Yeah.
approaches
Just need
to a
explore
problem.
it. Yep.
And then when I was 13, I started using FreeBSD. I had a friend that said, "Oh, Windows is like for losers. You can't use Windows. You got to use like a system where you have to like fucking compile your kernel every night and wake up in the morning to find that your compilation failed sometime. And you have to go to school because you're 13 and your computer isn't working." So that's the very long intro. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry for taking up.
And then
so
you
much
went
of
to
your
the
time.
military.
Yeah. So
That's part of
in
life
Israel,
in Israel.
it's a rite of passage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless you're never mind. That's politics.
We'll leave politics beside.
Yeah. It's a very
Really?
loaded subject. But
Yeah.
so it's in Israel, when you're 18, you're supposed to go to the army to do a military service of 3 years if you're a dude. I was, if you're studying, so in high school I studied computer science, and if you're like a computer science student in high school, usually like you'll go into that special list in the military where they interview you for a whole bunch of different units, and they ask you all sorts of technical questions. So after a very long process, I ended up doing my military service in a governmental intelligence agency. So it was kind of cool because my military service was outside of the military, so I didn't have to wear a uniform and I didn't have all of the bullshit of the army.
You were like
I was just like, I was
employee.
I was a civil servant. I was working with people who were at that time were old enough to be my dad. And it was an interesting experience, and I got to do a lot of really, really cool stuff there. And I ended up working there for 9 years doing all sorts of offensive security research, defensive security research, stuff that I'll probably never be able to talk about. But it was a very, very cool time in my life and in my career. And when I decided that it was enough for me, that I am sick and tired of.
Or just greedy like me.
No, I was just about to say sick and tired of not getting paid.
For the work that.
Yeah, I left and I joined Cybereason, where two of the three founders of Cybereason worked literally in the adjacent room next to me, and we met there. And when I joined Cybereason, that's where I met Lital. So
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good story. Well, I'm sure people are wondering if this is a career for me. Is it too late if I didn't start at the age of 5?
Oh,
What does it take for somebody to go into, red teaming, research today? I mean, we've talked a lot about people coming now out of tech with all the layoffs and stuff, and a lot of open jobs still in security. So
yeah.
people might be thinking about going into, is it something that you think somebody can restart a career and go into research?
Yeah, it's such a, security or cyber nowadays, as the kids call it, it became such a diverse ecosystem. I mean, there's so much stuff to do. And also, again, when I started, or, when Didi started, there wasn't really a knowledge base. Like now you go on YouTube and you just watch someone explain to you how to do things, which is amazing. I mean, you don't even need to go to a conference because the conference talks are on YouTube. So if you want to get into it, you need an internet connection and some curiosity and time, and that's it.
I find that the latter thing, that's the big problem.
What, time?
Not investing time?
No, curiosity.
Oh.
Curiosity, I think, is a key thing for being a good researcher.
Yeah.
Because you need to ask yourself, why does it do that? And and how come it works this way?
And what will happen
if I do this?
Yeah. So
you should just go and do it, right?
And fearlessness, because there's a lot of people that think, oh, what will happen if I'll break this? Okay.
You'll break it.
You'll break it.
It'll be broken.
It'll be broken. So it's not like the OS2 of the nuclear reactor somewhere.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I think that it's so weird. Like for me, so I just turned 36, and I'm feeling that I'm getting older, and not necessarily wiser, but older. And
wait to 48.
Oh, dude, inside I'm 67, and I'm like, I'll be on Instagram, and Instagram, like there are content creators who do like security or hacking tutorials on Instagram, and it's so bizarre because I'm used to reading a long form blog post or some sort of report, or going to a conference and watching some guy or some person like
presenting for 30 minutes.
Presenting for 30 minutes, and now it's like this Instagram TikTok format where it's like super concise, 25 seconds. Do this, do that. That's it. Boom. Video. And it's so intense. And like for me as a person who is not used to this format, I mean, is it good? Is it working? Like, can you actually learn something from it? I mean, isn't it like cheapen
the experience?
The experience, So that is something that I'm very like, it's so confusing because on one hand it's so good that, it gets new people and new talent into the pool, but on the other hand it's like, seriously, 25-second videos on your phone? Like that's how you want to learn? So it's really confusing.
For me, what I've noticed is that it creates more of automatons than a thinker, at least from my experience with people that have been educated that way. They know the mechanics, but they don't understand the why.
Exactly. And that is, when you said curiosity, this is why I went to this example, because I think that a lot of people are curious, you know, and when I talk to people, they're like, oh, wow, what you're doing is so cool. And even like when I go, even like, you know, I just did a podcast like from home, and I was interviewed on Zoom or whatever. And I have like this cool, I have like a second desk behind me that has all of my electronic stuff, because, you know, when I'm doing research on IoT devices, I sometimes have to take them apart and, you know, mess with the hardware and do all of that stuff. And it looks really cool, like when it's behind me. And you know, the guy on the podcast saying, oh, wow, this is so cool. Like, it looks like a mad scientist lab. And it's like, wow, like, oh, maybe you can teach me how to do. And it's like, that's what I feel about those TikTok videos where.
Well, you spend nights and days on each of those devices.
I'm just coming off.
How long it takes you.
Yeah, I'm just coming off of a research project that took 6 months.
Yeah.
6 months of like staring at things and swearing at them, and then, you know, you want to take something like that and compress it into like a 25-second video, and just because it looks cool, you know. So this is something I don't understand.
The Didi and Lital show will return in a moment. The Didi and Lital show is sponsored by Ort. In today's world, identities are the perimeter protecting the organization and are the most exploited vector by attackers. If your security teams are struggling to maintain control of identity management tools, Ort can help. Ort offers a centralized platform for discovering, monitoring, assessing, and remediating identity threats to your business. While most security platforms can take weeks or months to start identifying and remediating risks, with Ort, your security teams can get started in as little as 30 minutes and start securing the identity perimeter immediately. Ort will surface the most critical vulnerabilities and give your security teams the recommended action steps. Start your trial today at ort.io. That's OORT.io. The Didi and Lital show is sponsored by Hunters. Hunters is a SaaS platform purpose-built for security operation teams, providing unlimited data ingestion and normalization at a predictable cost. Hunters helps SOC teams mitigate real threats faster and more reliably than SIM. Visit hunters.ai to learn more.
So that I have a question for you, because one of the things I'm noticing more and more is that the threat research department falls under marketing. Not that we have anything bad to say against marketing.
Well, I make a living out of it, so we should be okay with that.
Exactly.
I made a living out of it because of hers.
Yes.
And became famous for a while. We can tell the story.
For a while.
Yeah.
That we should tell. So this has been my always dilemma of should threat research reside under more of marketing, under more what I like to call the research for efficacy, because my buddy Eric, who I'm also probably going to drag here, makes the security products better versus the making other products better. Because in the marketing department, you basically tell people, hey, I have a problem. You, the world, have a problem. You should fix it. Versus,
oof, that's a loaded subject.
That's why I wanted to.
I can maybe jump in and say before Amit goes, it really depends. Like, what are you trying to achieve out of the research? Yes, there are companies that see it as a vehicle to get the story out, that see it as a vehicle to get press coverage. We talked a little bit in the past, is it legit, is it not, as long as it's true. And so we can touch, and I want to touch about, because I think we share some points about it. And
experiences.
Some are ambulance chasing, and that's probably not okay. But I think this is relatively new. I mean, the basics of research is for other things, right? It is for making a product better, more resilient, finding your issues. So I think this should be first and foremost. The marketing came later.
And how about sales? Because one of my points is that you need a researcher to show, especially in an environment that doesn't have the critical event yet, to basically show, hey, here's how Evil Engine X works. Yeah. Let's set this up and show you how your Okta gets.
So sometimes for some products, you're saying you need a red team to actually be the and show. Otherwise, the product, if you're not being hacked, the product will not do anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah. So with regards to your question, it's really weird because when I worked at Cybereason with Lital, when I joined the company when I was still in Israel, I worked on the research team, but all of my work was for the product.
Yep.
So how to improve the product, how to catch more threats, how to mitigate threats, yada 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 yada. And when I moved to the US, and I joined, the office in Boston, I sort of got disconnected from the development lifecycle and R&D and all of that. And I still wanted to do research, and the company wanted me to do research. So we came into this solution. And again, the company was younger then, there weren't many of us. I think I was the only researcher in the States, at the company back then.
Does Jonathan agree with you?
Well, Jonathan was CTO.
Yeah. And
He did not do.
You could ask him if you want.
I don't think he's into doing this thing.
I plan to ask him, don't worry.
Yeah.
And
We can bring Jonathan, by the way.
I think he's going to
should.
be here
Yeah.
next week or something.
Oh, really? I'll reach out.
And there was so much stuff to be done. There was, we were trying to build the name of the company.
Right.
And in the field of security, it's really kind of weird because, if you look at I don't know, if you're a car company, if you're Ford will not have researchers trying to break into I don't know, Jeep vehicles or trying to highlight faults in a competitor and help them solve it. That doesn't happen. And in security, I mean, you have Microsoft finding and disclosing critical bugs to Apple on their stuff. And then Apple are patching and making their stuff more secure because of some researcher that works for Microsoft. So it's the whole ecosystem is really strange in security. And then you have a lot of startups. So companies like the company I work at now, or how Cybereason was back then, or when I left Cybereason and worked at Guardicore, which was later acquired by Akamai, so at Cybereason, I actually founded Nocturnus, which was the team that does all of the advanced research for the customers, but we would often, I don't want to say capitalize because it sounds bad, but we would use the stuff that we found, anonymize it, and reveal details, again, without infringing any of the customer's intellectual property or identity or whatever. We would share our findings with the industry, and other companies were doing this as well. And, we could be in direct competition with another company, but the researchers from the two companies would have this back channel where they're cooperating. So the whole ecosystem is very strange in security. And then I mean, when you say researchers at company X unveiled a destructive campaign that blah 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 blah, it's great PR. So when you take these two separate entities where one is very good at doing research and finding really, really crazy stuff, but oftentimes the same people who are very good at research are really bad at presenting it. So, you'll get them together with the marketing people who will try to take these discoveries and then capitalize on it. Again, without capitalize has some negative aspects in it, the word, but what I'm trying to say is, oh, wow, our research group did this awesome research. They found a vulnerability in a product, or they found a malware campaign or whatever. And here is how they did it. Here is what they found. And this shows that we at Company X are the shit. We know what we're doing. So
I think we are doing it as companies and using it for marketing because, and I hope this is the case, you'll tell me what you think, we think it signals to the customers that buy our products that, as you said, we know shit. That the people that build the product are similar to the people that do this research. They
It's
actually
that. It's
improve the product based on this research.
Yeah.
So kind of like you, Mr. Customer, see how we're good and we unveil this campaigns or those vulnerabilities. You're kind of like getting it productized into what you're buying. So this is the kind of message we're trying to.
But I think
do you
the-
think it's true that companies that are good at research necessarily have a good product, or is it
No.
a good signal?
no, and
Is it the opposite?
no, and I won't name names, but it's two things. First of all, it's what you said, but it's also a great way to recruit. So
Okay.
to recruit more researchers. So for
or
example,
people to even R&D, right? Because
yeah,
like,
when I worked at Guardicore before the acquisition, I joined a team that its sole purpose was a quote unquote PR research. So it was myself and a group of like really talented people. I mean, now Ofir Alpaz is heading that team. She's an amazing researcher out of Israel, a good friend of mine. And everything that this team does has absolutely nothing to do with the product of what Guardicore, now Akamai, are doing. Nothing. And it really helps recruiting other researchers or developers or like-minded people, because they say, oh wow, we can work with those people on those things. Mm-hmm. And so it's a great recruiting tool as well, because for me as a technical person, as a researcher, let's say tomorrow I would look for a job, I would look at those teams. Like I would say, oh wow, they have this person and this person and that person. Like when I decided that it's time for me to move on to a different company, when I decided to leave Cybereason, I was talking to Ofir, which is a friend of mine, and I really appreciate and value her experience and pretty much everything she does in the field. And I was like, oh wow, I'll get to work with her. That's awesome. So like that what drew me into joining. So there's also that aspect.
I have to say, because I want to share our experience of like how you got famous, but
Oh, God.
but I think that the thing that I realized is that there is a place of making the world better. I mean, the specific thing that you found out that led to this big PR was really a terrible, terrible attack that the world was going through. And you were in the right place in the right time and lucky.
Can you guys tell the story?
I'll let Amit tell the story.
So in 2017, the Russians decided that they want to mess with Ukraine yet again, or before or whatever.
Yeah.
Before they launch missiles.
Yeah, for the millionth time, by the way, because they've been messing with them for a while.
The grid, yeah.
Yeah, they shut off the part of the grid, I think a year or two before.
Mm-hmm.
And they launched a what appeared to be ransomware, but it was a wiper, which is now like the de facto standard of these attacks. But and basically what they did is there's a software company that's called the product name is MEDoc. The name of the company is Intellect something. I forget. It's been a while. It's been 5 years. And basically what they did is a Russian threat group called Sandworm breached that software company. And that piece of software, MEDoc, is like this accounting program that everyone that does business in or with Ukraine, back at the time at least, had to use for all of the...
It's like the TurboTax of Ukraine.
Yeah.
You have to use this software to pay taxes in Ukraine, or if you work with Ukraine, or you have some entities. So basically,
exactly.
Any international company that had something to do with Ukraine had to use this software, right?
Yeah.
And the manufacturer of that...
and they got popped, and the short version of the story is... the Russians breached that company and basically Trojanized MEDoc in a way that will allow them to identify MEDoc's customers by their tax ID number, which will then allow them to say, so this tax ID number is but this company or a university or wherever. I want to run malicious code on their network or their machine. And that's pretty much what they did. And they've unleashed this devastating ransomware worm, which was then dubbed NotPetya. And that started spreading across Ukraine, and it wreaked incredible havoc. So like ATMs didn't work, and banks were offline, universities were offline, public transit was offline, like everything stopped working. But then it also started spreading outside of Ukraine, and it actually impacted Maersk, the international shipping company. There's an incredible story about Maersk that is shared on a book by Andy Greenberg called Sandworm, which I highly recommend. And basically Maersk was knocked offline, and they were only saved because they had like this old crusty computer somewhere in Africa that didn't get hit yet. Incredible story. But what happened was with NotPetya, it started spreading, and I was in Israel actually visiting my family at the time. And I was on my way back to my parents' house, where when I was driving back, I heard on the radio that there were two things that happened. One was a Ukrainian general was assassinated, and that there is this ransomware attack in Ukraine. I was like, oh wow, that sounds interesting. And I got to my parents' house, and my dad was watching the news, and I was sitting next to him. And my dad is like really not a technical person. He calls the microwave that dishwasher that warms food. So like he's really not a technical person. And like I'm sitting next to him on the couch, and he's like asking me questions like what's going on, if I can explain it to him. And then my mom comes in, and my mom is also not a technical person. And my mom is like the stereotypical Jewish mom, like, oh, can't you fix it? Can't you help them? Can't you fix it? And I was like, oh, okay.
I'll try.
And I was like, I don't know.
Why not?
I mean, I don't know. I only have my Mac here. This is a Windows malware. I didn't have a single way of like running the malware in some sort of like test environment. I had nothing. So all I did was static analysis. I basically opened the executable of the malware, or the DLL, I forget what it was. And I started just looking at what it does. And I was on this WhatsApp group with like 100 other Israeli researchers, and they were all talking about the cryptographic aspect of it. How can you decrypt the files? And as I said, I didn't go to school, so I don't know math. So I don't know anything that has to do with cryptography. So like, I'll let them deal with that. They seem to know what they're doing. And I was like, okay, I wonder if there's a way to like make it crash or not work or whatever, because this was like 2 months after or a few months after WannaCry.
Yep.
And WannaCry was stopped by Marcus Hutchins, at the time an anonymous British researcher that went on and registered a domain that he saw that the malware is reaching out to, and that basically stopped the attack. And
yeah, he like vaccinated it.
That was the kill switch.
Yeah. Oh, kill switch.
And after that happened, Jonathan, the CTO of Cybereason, was like, being sarcastic, like, why wasn't it you? Like, why like, what am I paying you for? Like, he was being very like facetious. So I was back to my parents' living room. I was there, and I was like opening the malware with IDA Pro, and I was looking for ways to make it stop. And then I saw that it actually has, like, I looked at all of the functions that it was importing, and one of the functions was exit process, which is a function that causes the process to exit. I was like, oh, cool. What calls that function? So you stand on the function, you hit X for the references to it, and you click the reference. It's like, oh, it looks for a file. And if that file exists, it'll exit process. And it does that before it starts encrypting everything. So it's like, okay, cool. All we have to do is find out the name of the file, and we're done. So that started an insane quest on like Twitter and WhatsApp and whatever, because what I had, the name of the file was like sample.something. Like, it wasn't like the original name of the file, and I had to know what the original name of the file was. And after a few back and forths, found out that the name of the file was perfc.dat, I think. And then I asked a coworker at Cybereason that had access to a lab, was like, okay, put this file in this location, try to run the malware, see what happens. And he goes, well, it's not running. Like, oh, nice. So back at the time, I think I had like 800 followers on Twitter or something like that. I was fairly anonymous. I mean, I was known mostly for my antics with like Mac malware and adware and that kind of stuff. And I posted it on Twitter, and it started gaining traction, and it started getting retweeted and retweets and retweets. And I ended that night having like, I think 4,000 followers on Twitter from 800.
What is Twitter?
I don't remember. I don't remember. I left Twitter. Twitter is like this Mastodon alternative.
Yeah. You're on Mastodon, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So it started getting retweeted, and it was very viral, and my phone was ringing until it ran out of battery because of press, and it was just nuts. And that made me like internet famous for like 5 minutes.
Awesome.
You got to add the double checks.
Oh, I had, it got me a blue check on Twitter, but
check.
now, I mean, you can just pay $8
Yeah,
to
exactly.
get one. So
And
you don't need
personalize
to fight Russian malware in order to.
Well,
do that.
you ended up being on CNN with this kill switch that you found.
with red bags under my eyes. Just I didn't sleep. Yeah, I was in Israel because I was also speaking at a conference there, and the day after it happened.
Right.
So I didn't sleep all night just from the adrenaline and like the journalists and everything. And I got to the conference in like about an hour or two before I was supposed to take the stage. I got a call from a reporter from CNN that wanted to come over and interview me, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, CNN. Okay. So he came and interviewed me, and you can find that on YouTube, and I look horrible there. And then after that, it was funny because I was interviewed by Russian state television, and they asked me if I know who's behind it. And it's like, come on, Russian state, come on. And I was like, and I looked at them and I smiled. I was like, I don't know. I don't deal with attribution. I don't know who that is. I don't know. Maybe you know. I don't know.
That's a great story. Great story. I think it's about time to play a game. We have a
about time.
game.
Oh, there's a game.
There is
There's
a
a
game
game.
for all our guests.
Okay.
So nothing to be scared of. It's going to be fun.
Okay.
Let's do it. We ready? Didi, you will lead.
And now Lital and Didi present Prove You're Not a Robot. 3 final authenticating questions for our guest.
Cool. So, Amit,
Yeah.
if you were a cybersecurity superhero, what would be your name, and who would play you in the Hollywood movie that would follow?
Oh, God. Oh, wow. What would be my name? Wow. Okay. It would be the Ghost. Not because it's like a cool hackery kind of moniker. It's because I'm very pale. So I think.
I see you on video.
Yeah, you can see it's very, very pale.
I thought you would say the reverser. I don't know.
It's very, very Twin Peaks-esque.
Right.
Like speaking like backwards and.
The reverser.
Yeah. No. You know, if I were a superhero, I wanted to be like this, because it's such a cliche that like the cybersecurity hacker type is always this guy who is like.
In a hoodie.
Yeah, well, yeah. No, but like a guy in a hoodie who has no social skills, who is like very, oh crap, that's me. Oh man, never mind. No, just like this kind of quiet guy who has a day job. Nothing fancy. I'm not
Mr.
like,
Anderson?
Mr. Anderson. Yeah, and who will play me? That's
Okay.
who?
Keanu. He's pale.
Well, I don't know. That's a tough one. I really don't know. I mean, I want it to be someone with like someone goofy with a sense of humor, like nothing serious. Like I can't think of anyone, but I know. What's his name? Bill Hader.
Bill Hader.
Yeah,
Nice.
I love him. So okay.
Okay. Good.
Cool.
Well, we already talked about breach horror
Yes,
story
exactly.
hacks,
So
so
I
we're
think-
probably gonna.
Now let's do the how do you waste your time on the internet?
Oh, wow.
Not on Twitter anymore.
No. So first of all, it's incredible because since I left Twitter, I have so much time.
time.
It's incredible. I'm not joking. So how I waste my time on the internet? A lot of reading on security stuff, which is not really wasting time, but investing time.
Okay.
Yeah, I watch a lot of political commentary on YouTube. So like a lot of American. So I'm obsessed with American politics. So a lot of that. So every day I have like a routine where there's like 2 or 3 shows that I watch. Each one of them is between 45 minutes to an hour, and I find the time either if like my wife is with the baby and I have some time, so I do that. If not, then after everyone's asleep, I watch that. So I spend a lot of time watching political commentary on YouTube.
You see, worse than me, listening
Yes.
to NPR and
Yes.
like
Oh,
that
not
going.
NPR. I'm talking about
Like real politics. This is why I purge my brain with sports a lot better. You sleep better. What new revolutionary technological innovation will arrive within the next 15 years?
Wow. I'm so bad at those things. I mean, I think that it's such a cliche again, but I think that AI is like exploding right now. And like it's so it happened like that. It's so fast. I mean, it started with the bullshit image generation.
Dolly.
Yeah,
Dolly.
and then DALL-E 2, which is incredibly impressive, and there's like 2 or 3 other stuff. And now there's ChatGPT, which is mind-blowing. I mean, I'm using ChatGPT for work. It's like it's great. And I think that this is going to be there's going to be a lot of growth there. Like there's no way there's not going to be. And I think that it's going to be something that nation state rivalry are going to spurt out of, because like who does a better ChatGPT, the Americans or the Chinese or the Russians or the Israelis or whatever. And I think that it is going to, offload a lot of thinking, a lot of brain cycles are going to get offloaded into AI. So I think that is going to be a very big revolution, and also electric cars, no doubt.
Cool. Anyways, Lital, bring us home.
Okay. Producer Dave. Okay, this has been another episode of the Didi and Lital show. Thank you, Amit, for joining us today. It was
Thank
a pleasure. Please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. We are here weekly. It's been a pleasure. Enjoy your day. Goodbye.